Hi friends, so we're past the halfway point in the Booktube Prize quarterfinals round, and I'm just finishing my first book, so I'm gonna have to spend more of my time going forward reading the books and less time rhapsodizing about what I have read. So quick check-in about the Book of Goose by Yiyun Lee. I'm not yet sure how I feel about the book, but it was very intriguing. So we're reading about an adult woman who has just learned that her childhood friend has died, and it's about her looking back at her childhood spent with this young girl when they were teens, and the very unique, complex friendship that they shared. So the author is Yiyun Lee, who's an Asian woman, but the book is set in Saint-Rémy, which is the French countryside, rural French countryside in the mid-1900s. And so we're reading a little bit about the impact of the war on the French peasants. But also how girls, maybe children of that age, kind of grew up without ambition for the future because they couldn't envision a life outside of their realm of experience. And so it's very interesting how someone without ambition goes on to do very complex things. But more than the accomplishment of this girl, it is more of the friendship and what makes complex friendships. So I found this book to be quite unique in the fact that it is metaphoric but also very intimate. And so the author gives us an experience of girlhood and friendship and closeness that seems to be more than friendship, but is also about kind of encompassing this like all-consuming love that you can have for someone and what it's like if it's returned or not. And we get various examples of it. But like I said, the book is kind of metaphoric. And so the Book of Goose, the only thing that I can think about geese is that they're migratory and that no matter where they go, they always come back. So we kind of see that reflected here with the characters, and it's really intriguing. So I can't wait to see what the rest of the round has in store for me and how this book will compare with other books that I read after it. Hi friends, so I finished another book. I finished Nightcrawling by Leila Mottley, and this is a strikingly well-developed novel considering that the author was a teenager when she wrote it. That also gives the book authenticity because the book is about a teenage girl, Kiara, living in Oakland, California, and she is in this chasm of in-between where she is too young to legally work. She's 17 years old, but she's also old enough that the people in her life, her parents and her brother, her older brother, feel comfortable leaving her alone, feel justified, I suppose, allowing her to make her own choices and to make her own way. And so Kiara is literally drowning. She's trying to take care of herself. She's trying to take care of the people around her, but she's almost failing, but she's also still being her own hero even while she's doing that. So this is Kiara's story, but it's also the story of young girls who are abused and victimized, sometimes at the hands of those in authority over them, those who should be charged with protecting them but fail to do so because of their own intentions. Yeah, I really like this book. I felt like it was really real and really intense, but also really heartwarming. Leila Mottley did a really good job with drawing these characters. I feel like they were complex, real characters, real people. It felt like they're really intense, they're really messy, but they're also really open-hearted. So I don't know if this is going to be my top book. I'm just going to have to keep reading and see how the rest of the books present themselves to me. So stay tuned. So I finished this one a few days ago, but I was so sick I could not record a clip. So I read The Marriage Portrait by Maggie and I really like this one. It is about, well, it's historical fiction and it's set in the 1500s, the 1550s in Florence in Italy. And we're reading about Lucrezia, the third daughter of the Grand Duke. And so we're reading about her youth, her childhood, growing up as like a middle child, and why she is like separated from her siblings because her mother was the mother they called the La Fecundissima, the very fertile woman. And so the mother had a lot of children. She had a lot of children early, and then she had like miscarriages or lost children, and so then Lucrezia was born, and then after that there was some period where she didn't have any children, and then she had more children at the end. So she had, Lucrezia has older siblings and younger siblings, but she's kind of separated in the middle. And so we read a little bit about her early childhood, what it's like being different. She's just a very different child, and so she had lots of different experiences. Her father, being the Duke, had all these passions for animals, and so he had
it was rumored that he had a tiger living in like the basement in the house, and so that kind of explains these kind of tiger stripes and how it relates to Lucretia. And so we're reading about her growing up and the close relationship that she has with her governess or her nanny. I'm not sure what title you'd call her, Sophia, and how she learns languages and how that gift and talent for languages affects her later life. But more than that, it is about her ability to paint and what visual reproduction means for her, because this is her marriage portrait, what it means for her as a person, but also what it means for her in her ability to communicate with the world. So the big historical significance of Lucretia's life is that she was given in marriage to another duke to join or to unite the kingdoms. So she was given in marriage when she was 15 and she was dead by age 16. And so for someone who lived such a short life, you'd be like, why is she historically significant? But this book explains why, and I love it. I love the way that Maggie O'Farrell tells the story. So we're reading about kind of 3 timelines. There's a timeline of her youth growing up in the duchy, with her parents and her siblings and the help. And then there is the journey that she takes, 2 journeys that she takes, one going off to be married and one in the days leading up to her death. And it's very interesting to see how those 3 things, it's very interesting to see how those 3 timelines tell the story of this young woman. I was really fascinated, really captivated by this book. So I'm not sure right now if this is a favorite. I'm not sure if this is my #1 pick, but I really, really liked it. So halfway there, 3 more books to go.
So I finished Trust by Hernan Diaz, and it's one of the 2 novels that won the Pulitzer Prize this year, and I could see why. I could definitely see why this book has been awarded. I'm not sure it's my favorite book, but I really enjoyed it. It is stories within a story, and I really like that. So this is a novel, and it is 3 versions of the life story of a man who was a successful financier, but also probably responsible, single-handedly responsible for the stock market boom and crash in the early 1900s. So we're reading about a novelization of his life that was published, and then when he is dissatisfied with how he's been portrayed, he decides to write his own memoirs. So there's the version that is in the novel, there's the version that's in his autobiography, and then there is the version from the perspective of someone else. And I don't want to tell you too much about the story because, I mean, it is a big book, but I don't want to give anything away. So I like that it includes a lot of the details of, you know, what success means and what success necessitated around this time. So a little bit about the history of the United States and New York specifically, but also a little bit about the politics of the time and how political maneuvers impacted and were impacted by private individuals. So really, really enjoyed this one. And so now I am off to read the next book.
Finished. And although I really, really, really like this book, it's also not a book that I would recommend to everyone, which is why I don't think this is going to fare very well when it's time to submit my rankings. This book has a lot of the things that I enjoy. So it's about an older woman character. The main character is an 80-year-old woman, and it's a little bit about the friendship between her and another woman that they've known each other for decades, and their friendship has survived the innate differences between their personalities and the fact that they're keeping secrets from each other. Like, how good of a friend are you if you're not really being your true self with these other people? But that's something that's explored here. So this includes, like I said, a lot of things that I like. The fact that the main character is an older woman, love that in books, but also that she's a writer and she is at different places, sharing herself with the world and also hiding herself. So she's writing different kinds of books. So she's known for being a children's book author, but she's also been writing fiction for more mature audience, and she's writing that under pseudonyms, so people think they know her but they don't really. And then of course there is this third kind of writing stream that is included here, and it's also a little bit about conservation, physical environmental conservation. So there's a lot about this book that I really like, but it's also like really long, and so the pacing is not completely great because feels like it shouldn't be this long exactly. So I like the book, but I don't think everyone is gonna like the book. I'm gonna recommend it for people who might like those characteristics in books, but I have one more book to read, and I guess we'll see how this fares. So I finished Demon Copperhead, Barbara Kingsolver. This is my first time reading anything from this author, and I definitely want to read more from her. It was an intense read, but I really enjoyed the pace. This is one of the books that won the Pulitzer for fiction this year, and I can completely see why, because it is such a representative story. It is about a boy. Well, it is a David Copperfield retelling, and I had intended to read David Copperfield before I read this, but you know, this being assigned to me right now, I couldn't do that. But I like how Kingsolver picks up the story and makes it American, like it is the American story of a boy overcoming or trying to overcome the challenges that his life is, just because of where he's born and who his family is and his community. We're reading a little bit about drug abuse, and abuse in lots of ways. Drug abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, domestic violence, all of that that impact this young boy. But also what it means to grow up like in the foster care system, and a little bit about child abuse, but also child labor. Like there are lots of themes that are covered here. I love how Kingsolver gave this like such an appropriate name, Demon Copperhead. Demon is a bastardization of Damon, who is the boy's given name. Copperhead being the name that he got from his father. So you know how you get your surname from your father, but in this case Copperhead is not his father's legal name. It's just the name that he would call him if this was, you know, the time and place where people would be called by what they look like, you know, in native culture. So a lot about this book. It is a huge book, but I think this is the book that I could most recommend. So I feel like at this point this is my #1 book, but I'm gonna have to rethink now. I'm just gonna have to go back through all the books that I have read thus far for the round and see how this compares. So let's do some calculations.
Okay, so I'm about to submit my ballots, and this might surprise you. I feel like I may be surprised myself, but this is my #1 book. My #2 book is The Marriage Portrait. #3 I think is Trust. #4, Nightcrawling, because that book was really great. #5 is the Book of Goose. And I'm gonna say my least favorite of the 6 books, even though it's a book that I still liked, was Fellowship Point. So yeah, that's my ranking. I'm about to submit, save ballot. Yeah, that's it. I can't do anything about it. I'm done.